Penn State Twitter and our Slack channel on BSD was a bit apocalyptic at times about, you know, fire everybody. Maybe we've calmed down a bit since then. So do you still want to fire everybody, Marty, or?
I mean, I definitely still have a lot of questions about some people on the staff, particularly the offensive side of the ball. Um, and from some of the reporting we've seen from some of the insiders on like 247 Sports, things of the nature, seems like James Franklin is feeling that same way about some offensive assistants. So I do think we'll see some coaching changes this offseason, but definitely not just pulling out to victory, but pulling out the way they did by really putting together a strong fourth quarter and coming up with big plays when they needed. It definitely helps. Definitely helps quell a lot of the concerns, I would like to think, in Nittany Nation.
Right. I mean, what's the one thing we kind of harped on during Losing Skid is they seem to fold under adversity, and this time they faced some adversity once again. Maryland tying the game to begin the fourth quarter, and then they score 17 straight to end it. With Brown's pick six being the final nail in their coffin. So it was definitely good to see that happen. I guess you maybe would have liked to see Parker Washington, Kendall Smith have a better game. They both had a couple. They both had a couple drops. I know Lambert Smith had a drop. Well, it was on the same drive where we ended up kicking a field goal anyway. But he had I remember he really dropped a nice dime in there. It was right about midfield, and he should have hauled that in and hit him right on the numbers in the spot where he should have grabbed it. So I mean that could have cost him potentially, but thankfully it didn't. So you'd like to see, next week, especially with Michigan coming to town, I'm sure they'll do a better job, trying to contain Dotson than Maryland was today. At least they got, better athletes on the defensive side of the ball. But I guess, going towards other things like the run game, at times it felt like, now obviously the stats aren't so, 34 carries, 97 yards. Now it does include minus 12 rushing yards for Cliff because sacks count as rushing yards, which is stupid if you ask me. But, so again, another pedestrian effort on the ground, no surprises there. But I'll say, I'm looking at that. Kevon Lee, 8 carries, 50 yards, had a long of 15, averaging about 6 yards a carry. So not too shabby. I would have liked to see a little bit more of him. I do think and Noah Cain, he had nothing to write home about, but at least he was falling forward at times, picking up some extra yards when Penn State needed them. So it was at least a bit encouraging to see. Now, again, this Maryland defense has been terrible against the run all year, so take it with a huge grain of salt. But, Marty, what did you think of did you think a little better than what we've seen in recent times, about the same?
It's funny because I'm currently working on my takeaways article for Black Shoe Diaries. I always do after the game. And literally, as you were saying, you'd like to see more of Kevon Lee. I was typing that Kevon Lee probably should have gotten more touches than he did. Like you said, he averaged over 6 yards a carry. Even catching the ball, he had 2 catches for 17 yards, made some plays there. I do think, with Noah Cain, he statistically didn't have a great game, but I thought at times today, Cain looked like he was running the ball the best he has all year. He ran with more conviction, looked to be running a little more confident than he did for a lot of the season. For much of the season, the struggles of the running game has been a joint effort between the offensive line and the running backs, I thought today, personally, it fell more on the offensive line than the running backs. I thought Lee and Cain both ran the ball hard. Both made guys miss. Both had some good bursts. But there just was not much help for them up front. So while the struggles of the running game has been a group effort for much of the season, I really did think today it fell more on the offensive line than the running backs.
Right. And, the offensive line, again, it was, mixed bag. At times, pass protection at times they were okay, like good enough at least to, open some lanes for the running game and protect Cliff. But other times, shaky. I guess at this point, we know what the offensive line is. Probably no need to really get into that. Like you said, Lions 24/7. There's been some hints that Franklin's going to be replacing certain coaches on the offensive side of the ball, especially. And if I were a betting man, I would think perhaps Phil Troutwine's on the chopping block, so to speak. So we'll see how that shakes out. I guess going over to the defense, obviously Maryland, they're a team that similar to Penn State, they can't really run the ball much. So they were also very reliant on their quarterback. And Tua Tagovailoa had just credit. Stat line was pretty good, 41 for 57, 371 yards and a touchdown. Although he threw a very costly pick six at the end when they were trying to make it a one-score game. But Marty, what was your impression of the defensive effort overall?
I mean, I thought for the most part, it's the defense we've seen most of the season. They played tremendous. Even when the offense put them in bad spots, they stepped up. There were multiple times in this game where Maryland looked like they were driving for points, and the defense would force a false start, draw a hold, get a sack, a TFL, whatever it might be. And next thing you know, Maryland's out of field goal range and stuck punting the ball. Or they're in no man's land and they're going for it on fourth down and the defense is getting a stop. I mean, yes, Talia Tagovailoa threw for, what'd you say, 370 yards?
371 yards.
371. But, I mean, it really didn't feel like he was, like, picking the secondary part or anything. To Maryland's credit, their receivers made some pretty ridiculous grabs today at times. And, again, just the defense did what they've done all year. They've stepped up when needed. And, I was really impressed with their ability. I mean, the pass rush was not great today by any means, but they also did not have Jesse Luketa. Derek Tangelo was kind of in and out of it, battling whatever that injury bug was for him. But to their credit, there were plenty of third downs when they needed to go get after him, and they were able to generate some pressure. Arnold Ebiketie had another big game with that. Brandon Smith was big as a blitzer today. But just as much as people, I feel like at times this year have unfairly ragged on this defense some, especially like that Iowa game for giving up those points late. So many times this year we've seen the offense put them in a tough spot, and they step up and answer the call, and they did it again today. And like we said, no play was bigger than that Jair Brown interception return, taking it back 87 yards to the house. So, yeah, I thought overall the defense played good. Could they have done a few things better? Yeah, they definitely could have got some more heat on Tagovailoa at times. But ultimately, you're not going to complain about going on the road and having your defense allow only 14 points while forcing, 2 or 3 turnovers, I think. Even that fumble by Maryland, yes, it's just the two, but even that fumble by Maryland, sure, there was some luck involved in that when the snap hit off of I think it looked like hit Talia's face mask and flew forward. It was a weird play, but the defense was still aware enough of what was going on. We're still heady enough to make sure they fell on the ball. And there's been plenty of times in the past where Penn State defenses have not done that. The ball's been there for the taking. They've failed to recover it. So, yes, there was some luck on their end in that play, but you have to be on your toes. You have to be aware, see the ball, see ball, get ball, and that's what they did today. So, yeah, I have no complaints whatsoever about the defense today. Brent Pry continues to have a tremendous season as a defense coordinator for the Nittany Lions, and John Scott Jr., the defensive line coach, very quietly continues to prove a lot of people who were questioning him after last year wrong. And I also think Anthony Poindexter, the safeties coach, and I don't think this is surprising anybody with his track record, both as a player and as a coach, is having a great season. I mean, you have Jaquan Brisker, who's playing at a legitimate All-American level, and Jair Brown is looking like an all-conference level safety.